I love picture books. They're one of my favorite teaching tools. They have beautiful illustrations, exciting stories. If it's a nonfiction picture book, oh my gosh, it gets me every time. These are some of our favorite tools to use with our students, especially when we're focusing on those reading skills and strategies. However, it's so important that our students are seeing reading passages on a really consistent basis. If you're anything like me and your heart is in picture books, but you know students need to see those reading passages in a consistent and intentional way in your classroom, stick around. That's what we're talking about today. Reading passages are intentionally chosen grade level appropriate sections of text. A reading passage could be an entire story all in one go, or maybe it's just going to be a part of a text. They can be fiction, nonfiction, poetry, all different genres can be included, and all different genres should be included. The big idea behind a reading passage is that it is being intentionally chosen to meet your students' needs. It's so important that we take time to really utilize and instruct on reading passages in the classroom, because that's how students are going to be assessed. Think about it. You have never given a test where you have given them a picture book to read and then answer questions about it. Students have to be able to read, analyze, reflect on, and then do those next steps within a reading passage. That's why we think it can be super helpful to truly use them as an instructional tool in your classroom. If you want to see how your students are doing with character traits or main idea or key details, you can do all of those things using a reading passage. If it sounds like a lot, don't worry. I have 6 easy things you can do right now to implement this in your classroom. When you're picking a passage for your students to use, you want to look at a few things. First and foremost, you want it to be appropriate for your learners. You want it to be appropriate for their reading level, appropriate for their abilities, and you want to make sure it's skill focused. If you're working on nonfiction in your whole group lessons and you want to supplement that whole group lesson with work in a reading passage, make sure they're working in a nonfiction reading passage. I also love to bring in cross-curricular options when I'm looking as well. If I can find a 3rd grade appropriate reading passage all about magnets to match what we're talking about in science, that is going to be an awesome choice. If you can pick things your students are interested in, the engagement is also going to be there, which is going to make the activity that much more meaningful to your students. Tip number 1 is make sure your students are being set up for success in using a reading passage. Think about skills that they're going to need to be successful working in the passage, no matter what context they're going to be working in it in. If you work in a grade where students are coming to you without prior experience working in reading passages, that's something that you're going to want to build time for in your whole group instruction at the beginning of the year. Make sure you're setting them up with all the skills they need to be successful working in a passage. All right, now that we have our baseline, let's really answer the question. Where am I going to use reading passages throughout my day? Don't worry, I have lots of places you can put them to make it meaningful and helpful for your students. My favorite place to use them, and probably the easiest, is in a whole group lesson. When you're using a reading passage in a whole group lesson, you are already there to scaffold for your students. You're modeling for them how to dig into the text, how to analyze the characters, how to read into those text features. And you can use a reading passage to teach almost any skill in a whole group lesson. I love to start the beginning of my school year by building a close read routine with my students in our whole group time. This means I'm going to be modeling for them how I read a text once just to read it, and then the second time I'm going to read to annotate. If you are looking for menus for students to use to annotate their text while they read, we have some great options in a bundle I'm going to be talking about at the end, so stick around so you can get the link for it. Using reading passages in whole group is an awesome way to introduce the skill to your students and really hit those teaching points that you're focused on. Reading passage location number 2 is going to be at your small group table. I love using reading passages at my small group table for a few different reasons. Number 1, they are easy to differentiate with your students. And again, you can hit almost any reading skill within a reading passage. When I'm working in my nonfiction unit, my students oftentimes are working in nonfiction passages when they're meeting with me in small group. I love that they're bite-sized, they're easy to interpret, and students can spend time over the whole course of a whole week digging into one specific passage. Small group is also an awesome time to reinforce those test-taking skills that go along with reading a passage and then answering questions based on the passage. You can pick passages based on your students' needs, and a lot of times you can differentiate within one passage to meet your readers' needs for your small group work. You all know I love it when I can talk about things that are working really well in my own classroom right now. I'm one of those people when something works, I'm like, I gotta shout it from the mountaintops. Other people need to hear. My favorite way to use a reading passage is in a center right now. I have a writing center right now using our seasonal reading passages where students are working in one passage over the course of 3 weeks. That means they're reading the passage over 3 times and they're doing different activities with it each time. The first time, maybe they're just reading it and answering the comprehension questions. The next week when they go to that station, they're going to do a little bit more with it. The third week when they're there, my students are doing a writing piece based on the skills discussed in the reading passage. This is such a fun way to get students working. Maybe you want students to work on it multiple times throughout the week. Maybe you want students just to read and answer 1 or 2 comprehension questions about it. Maybe you have it set up as a partner read, where they're working with students of different reading levels to read and answer the questions together. There are so many great ways to put your reading passages into your center work. Finally, my favorite way to incorporate reading passages in my classroom is to use them to focus on holidays. We love a holiday around here, and every 3rd grader loves a holiday as well. And reading passages are a great way to talk about holidays, but still keep that academic focus. There are some amazing options out there all about different holidays, the traditions that go along with them. And again, anytime you can bring in anything cross-curricular, it's going to be great. By doing a holiday-focused reading passage with your students, the engagement is already there and it's going to help bring the excitement for that holiday fun. Oh, you made it! I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about my favorite resource to use when it comes to reading passages. I love our seasonal reading passages. This is an amazing bundle that's going to have reading passages for the whole year. Now, you can buy each month individually, but I like the whole thing. Every month, it's so easy. I go in, grab my folder, pull the passages that my students are working in that month, and the best part is you're getting way more than just the passages in this resource. Within the seasonal reading passages bundle, you're getting fiction and nonfiction reading passages, questions, application activities, and writing prompts, and some of my favorite notes and reference charts that my students use all year long to support them as they are close reading those passages. This is an awesome resource and it makes it so easy because you're starting off with a year's worth of passages that are ready to go. Most of them are going to be themed perfectly for your month with great seasonal and holiday connections right there for you. If this resource sounds like something you want to add to your classroom arsenal and get students working with those reading passages, make sure you grab it. It's going to be linked up in the cards and down in my description box. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope I've given you some great ideas for ways you can incorporate reading passages into your classroom, whether it's going to be in whole group instruction, small group, or maybe working in a center rotation. As always, let me know down in the comments what else you want to see from us, and we hope you have a not so wimpy day. Bye!